Hey guys, what is up? It's Flag44 here, bringing another Star Wars Battlefront 2 gameplay slash commentary. The gameplay is more of just a background sort of thing. It's actually some pretty entertaining jet fighter sort of space war deal. I don't know. I had fun playing it, and I think it's might be semi-entertaining to you. Anyway, the topic for this commentary is going to be the Seahawks 2012 NFL Draft. This is something where I just want to do a commentary on it. I have this big 18-minute gameplay. I don't know how much of that I'm going to use, so you might see it sped up at the end if I finish early or whatever. But basically the gameplay is here's me driving my little ship. I had to get used to the controls again, so I mess up, when I'm steering it occasionally. And like some are harder to steer too, so obviously you'll see some more fails or whatever. And then kind of my goal is to destroy this ship here by taking out certain parts, and then I can go inside and land my ship and then destroy it from the inside too. That's always one of my favorite parts of this, is to destroy, like land my ship in there and then like steal their ship or destroy them from the inside. I don't know, I always find that fun. Anyway, moving on to the Seahawks draft. So this is just kind of an overview, I guess, to start us off. The Seahawks made some interesting draft choices, choices that no one really expected. Obviously, there's probably one or two that people were like, oh yeah, I actually saw on Twitter, like, this one guy called 3 of them, but they were like right before they were drafted, so it wasn't just, pre mocked or whatever. So yeah, so they made some interesting choices. They made moves that weren't necessarily like the best players on the board, as far as talent level, but they made their decisions off of what would fit best for their system. And I thought it was a great draft. I thought they made the right moves, and I'm really excited to see how these players are going to do. I personally think that if you have a guy destined for a certain role and where he can excel there, you gotta take advantage of that and draft him there rather than a guy that is a good player, but you don't know where he's gonna fit in. Now with that being said, you have to know where you're gonna take these guys, because if you have a guy you really like but other teams don't really like him, then you don't want to take him with your first pick, because you might have a guy that you like less but other teams like more, so then you can take him there and then get the other guy in a later round. So that's something you have to balance, and a lot of NFL draft analysts didn't look like they understood that, and they were like, oh, well, they could have gotten these guys later, but the things they don't have are actual talking to NFL teams and, knowing where these guys are going to take them. So that made, like Mel Kiper Jr., he's an NFL draft analyst. He's pretty, I don't know, like, I mean, he definitely knows what he's doing, but I don't know, I don't know if he realizes that. I think he thinks he knows, like, thinks he's better than he actually is at this. Because a lot of time he's completely wrong in drafting it. He was like, I gave the Seahawks a B in the draft in the actual value picks, but as far as the draft process, they get like a D- or something like that. Where in actuality, reports have come out that the Seahawks didn't really reach in any of their players. Other teams would have taken them like a few picks back. So he doesn't really know all that, and he doesn't have access to all that information. What he should have done there is like realize that and maybe even look into it, because he works for ESPN. He probably has some sort of connections there. But with that being said, let's just get on into it. So I'll pull up the list of draftees. So starting off in round 1, the Seahawks were set to pick at number 12. They lost a coin toss to Kansas City, and so Kansas City and Seattle were like the same draft position, but then the coin toss, split them up or whatever. And the Seahawks lost that, so instead of picking 11th, they're picking 12th, which, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. What are you going to do about it? It's not like you can really get angry about that. Maybe there should be a better system determining that. I don't know. It seems like there could be, rather than to leave that up completely to chance, because like the difference between a 1 and an 11 and 12, at least in the first round, is, I mean, it's not like extremely significant, but it's fairly significant. And if that would be a difference between like a 5 and a 6, that could be huge. So maybe NFL needs to look into that. So the first pick, so they're getting ready to pick, and people have some ideas. They could be Melvin Ingram, Fletcher Cox is still there, but the Seahawks have their own agenda, and they trade down to 15 with the Eagles, and they get some picks back there, which they had 6 picks going into the draft, and they had 10 picks overall in the draft. So they traded back a few times, and they still got the guys they wanted, because that's a good thing about the Seahawks. There's not usually guys that all the other teams want. They'll pick guys that they want for their system. So they trade back to 15, and then they were going to trade back again, but they couldn't really find a good situation because they knew other teams were going to pick this guy up. And so they decided just to submit the pick, and they picked Bruce Irvin from West Virginia. And I'd never heard of this guy, but I became pretty familiar with him after researching and learning about him and listening to all the reports about him. And basically, he's probably the best pass rusher in the draft. That's what analysts are saying. The problem is with him is that he went to West Virginia, and he played there for 2 years when he transferred to junior college, and when in high school he dropped out because he was in drugs and he was dealing drugs and he went to jail, and so he had this whole deal. But he's pretty much gotten over that. He did have one little charge on him for knocking over a pizza sign or something like that, but apparently that was fake or whatever, and he denied that. So if he was like, well, you think I would risk chance everything I've worked towards for something stupid like that? No way or whatever. So hopefully that's true, but regardless, I don't think it really matters. Hopefully he doesn't do any of that stuff. He looks like a great player. The one thing about him is he's a super good pass rusher. He's got 4.3 speed. He's going to get lots of sacks for the Seahawks, but he doesn't have any other parts of his defense, so that needs to be improved. Obviously, when you're that fast and that good at rushing the pass, you should be able to be at least decent against the run because you'll be able to get to running back. So hopefully the Seahawks coaches can teach him some of that, because apparently he didn't learn much at West Virginia, and he can learn more there. So I like the pick. I thought the Seahawks had a specific role. This is going to make the whole Seahawks defense better, because the Seahawks defense, they have a great secondary. They had 3 out of their 4 defensive backs made the Pro Bowl, and the other one, Richard Sherman, which they got in the 5th round of last year, was as good as any of them. So he didn't play the full season because Marcus Trufant got hurt. Then he stepped in, kind of performed extremely well in that position. And so they have a great secondary, probably one of the best in football. But they had a pretty good defensive line. It wasn't great. They were able to stop the run. Chris Clemons was the only guy that pretty much was a force against quarterbacks for sacking. And this is going to be able to improve the whole defensive line, because they'll be less pressure on them, and the secondary, because Bruce Irvin's going to force more have more sacks, which is gonna put harder counts for the opposing offense. And this is the thing that people are gonna miss, but he's gonna have an impact on a lot more plays than the sacks he's been credited to. So I expect for the secondary, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Brandon Browner, I expect for them to perform better, and get more interceptions too, because there's going to be more wild throws and more forced throws because of a guy like Bruce Browner off the side. And so that'll be interesting. I think that's just a whole, one little guy there can just create a whole domino effect of improvement, because it's not like this is where the Seahawks are really strong at. So with Chris Clemons on the other side, I think they can really make some strong strides there. And now the next pick, they chose to select Bobby Wagner out of Utah, and they traded back again. This is kind of interesting because when they traded back, they had some interest. They had a lot of players still open there, and they were, people were speculating on what they wanted there. And when they traded back, the guy selected right before it was Michael Kendricks, which is regarded as one of the best, linebackers in the draft, really solid linebacker. And so it's like, wow, did the Seahawks, have him select or have him above Bobby Wagner, and they just ended up with Bobby Wagner, or how did that work out? But my guess is the Seahawks liked Bobby Wagner and thought he was better, because I don't think the Seahawks would chance that sort of thing if they weren't positive like they showed with Bruce Irvin and that pick there. So they racked up a lot more picks throughout the draft so far in the first and second. And Bobby Wagner is a linebacker from Utah State. And he's, let's see, so Bruce Irvin is 6'3", 245. Bobby Wagner is 6 feet, 235. Bruce Irvin's 245 and Bobby Wagner's 235. So little differences there. All right, so I just try to switch back to the screen to see where I'm at. I'm at 9 minutes ish. So I should be fine here. But that ended the recording, so I just had to reset that there or whatever. So here we go. Bobby Wagner, next guy, Utah State. I like that pick. I think he'll add some more, depth to the linebacking core, which was really a strong or a need of upgrade coming into the offseason, but they did get some guys like Barrett Rude, I think it is, and this re-signed Leroy Hill. So they got some guys back there, but this will be a nice addition. I think he can step up and become a starter. Looks like he's going to be a great player. And then in the third round, they surprised a lot of people and selected Russell Wilson, who's a quarterback from Wisconsin. I really like Russell Wilson. He's a super smart player. He's got top 10, skills and everything but height. He's only 5'11", so that'll be interesting to see how he progresses if he turns into one of the better quarterbacks in the league, because there's not many quarterbacks in the league that are under 6'2". Drew Brees probably being the main guy there. So we'll see how that goes. I think that'll be super interesting because I think he's going to perform extremely well in the preseason and put some pressure on guys like Matt Flynn, Tavares Jackson, Josh Portis, or whatever. This was kind of a surprising pick because the Seahawks had gotten Matt Flynn in starting the offseason, and everyone was expecting him to kind of be the guy in charge. But then they got Russell Wilson. It wasn't like a big surprise that they selected a quarterback, but they selected quarterback this early. People thought maybe 5th, 6th round they could get a developmental guy. So it'll be interesting to see who gets dropped when they start the season, because Josh Portis is a guy he was super raw. He had like 4th round talent, I think people were saying, but he's just too raw and had some trouble off the field. And then Russell Wilson's definitely going to make the team. Matt Flynn's definitely going to make the team. But then it's pretty much going to be between Tavares Jackson and Josh Portis. And me personally, I think Josh Portis should take that because Josh Portis can develop into something that possibly a starting quarterback. Tavares Jackson kind of like there's only one year on his deal left, and he wasn't terrible, but he's not going to get any better than that, I don't think. So I would take Josh Portis. And then you have a guy like Matt Flynn and Russell Wilson probably going to prove that he can step in if need be. But what that does, limit is you're going to have like 2 guys that haven't played down, and then Matt Flynn, who's only played a few games as a backup, but he seems pretty experienced. So I think the preseason is going to be huge if Russell Wilson steps up, which I expect him to do, and if Matt Flynn proves that he is not shaky and just a solid guy there. I think they should be there. I personally think it'll end up being Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn, and Tavares Jackson, and hopefully they can move Josh Portis to like the practice squad, but it'll probably get picked up by a different team. So maybe they can pull off a trade there, because I'd hate to just release him like that. But we'll see how it goes. It will definitely be interesting. And then next in the 4th round, they selected Robert Turbin, running back out of Utah State. And in the 3rd round and kind of the 4th round, the Seahawks, everyone's kind of like, are they going to draft Chris Polk here? Because Chris Polk was the guy from Washington. He was a great running back who had 2nd to 3rd round talent. But unfortunately, he had a problem with his shoulder, like he had a degenerative shoulder or something like that, or degenerative hip. All sorts of injury reports because he had multiple surgeries on his shoulder, and so teams were kind of scared to draft him, so he didn't get drafted at all. I personally think he was worth a 7th round pick because I know he's going to make the team for the Eagles, which he signed with, and I know he's going to end up being a great back. So that's one of those things where it's like, well, he does have those injury concerns. As a 7th round pick, a lot of 7th round picks aren't going to make the team. Might as well, give him a chance. So that sort of thing, I don't understand why none of the teams can figure that out, but I guess all the teams think that they are drafting players that are going to make the team. So, I guess that kind of makes sense. And so they got Robert Turbin. I think he's a super strong guy. If you look at his biceps, they're just massive, and he's just going to be a great backup to Lynch, I think, that can step in and just pound the ball when Lynch is out, so they can just have a constant, tough running attack that'll open up the passing game more. And then the second pick in the 4th round was Jay Howard, defensive tackle out of Florida. This was a pick that I hadn't heard of this guy. I had definitely heard of Turbin. I'm pretty sure I'd heard of Wagner, Wilson. I hadn't heard of Irvin, but I'm sure. I don't know. So Jay Howard, I don't know. This was kind of the first pick where I was kind of like, what? I don't see how this is gonna work out. But after looking into more, I think he can be a solid player, but probably more of a backup. This is probably the first pick that's gonna be a backup guy solely. So we'll see. Then the 5th round, they got Korey Toomer, who's a outside linebacker from Idaho. So woohoo, Idaho there. Victory to us Vandals. Not really us. I'm not really Idaho Vandal, but hey, whatever. I like the Idaho Vandals. So that'll be interesting. Don't really know much on him, but I know Idaho players are tough and probably overlooked and probably a chip on their shoulder. And I think he could be a KJ Wright, which was drafted in the 4th round or 5th round last year, or maybe 2 years ago, something like that. So I like that pick. 6th round, they got Jeremy Lane out of Northwestern State. So super small town school. He ran a 4.47, I believe, 40-yard dash. I don't know, some of these stats where I'm just kind of like shocking myself that I can remember this stuff. Sports just sticks with my brain like crazy. But he had a strained part in his leg, and so he wasn't, running to full potential. He is 6'1", or no, 6 feet. So a little shorter than Seahawks cornerbacks. The Seahawks cornerbacks Seahawk coaches like their cornerbacks tall. But he, super fast, and I think he can be a nice backup and step in, maybe a little boost, or maybe even trade bait, because I think he'll progress into a nice quarterback. So I like that pick. Next pick was Winston Guy, safety out of Kentucky. Maybe it was Winston Guy that had the injury, something like that. One of these, I know it was either Winston Guy or Jeremy Lane. His safety out of Kentucky. I think Kentucky, you play in the SEC, you play against some tough teams. So he should be a good guy. Good guy. That'd be a great meme. Good guy. Hopefully it turns into a good guy, so then we can make the good guy meme. I like that pick. 6'1", 218. J.R. Sweezy, defensive end out of North Carolina State. I like that pick. I think this might be the guy that's turning into an offensive tackle, or that's Greg Scruggs. One of these guys is actually going to be an offensive tackle or transition to the offensive line. So that'll be interesting. And then they got Greg Scruggs, defensive line, Louisville. So, these end picks aren't really, much to comment on because I haven't researched these guys, enough because there's not much on them. But I like the drafts. I think it was a great draft for Seattle, and I think people will be looking back on this like, wow, that it was actually a pretty good draft for Seattle, even though it didn't look like it was. There's no guys in here that I'm not happy with, so that's good. So we'll see how these guys goes. I know the preseason is going to be extremely entertaining because I'm excited to see how these guys perform and see which guys threaten each other's job, because the Seahawks are all about competition. And so I think a lot of these guys can add to the competition, and that'll be interesting, especially the quarterback position, because you've got, Tavares Jackson was the starter last year, but he hasn't really lost his job yet. And then Russell Wilson, he's probably going to start as a backup, but I honestly think he's going to be a great quarterback in this league, even though he's small, because he did play behind the biggest offensive line in NCAA football. They had average like 6'7", which is kind of crazy. So I really like the draft. I'm excited for preseason. We'll see how it goes. I'll see you guys later. Victory for us. Hopefully you enjoy the gameplay. And here's my stats. Pretty cool. Just looking through these. Nice. I love all the names. They're really weird. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.